You know, when a crisis kicks off in one part of the world, how does that shockwave actually travel across the entire globe? I mean, what if you could actually simulate that ripple effect using AI and get ready for it before it even happens? Well, that's exactly what we're going to dive into today. Seriously, just stop and think about it for a second. Your phone, the coffee you're drinking, the clothes you're wearing, all of it got to you through this massive, invisible global supply chain. And most of the time, it works so well we don't even notice it's there. But when just one little link in that chain breaks, maybe it's a storm, a labor strike, or some political mess, whoa, those shockwaves spread incredibly fast and far. Okay, so here's the game plan. First, we'll talk about this invisible ripple effect. Then we'll check out a pretty cool solution. Think of it like a flight simulator for supply chains. We're going to run a live simulation of the Venezuelan oil crisis, see how we can use it to make better decisions, and wrap up with the big idea, being ready instead of just reacting. All right, let's get right into it. And look, we're not going to just stick to theories here. To make this super real, we're going to focus on a specific high-stakes scenario, the Venezuelan oil crisis. So the real problem is that a crisis like this isn't just one thing happening in one place. Nope. It's more like a domino effect. You get political instability and boom, ports can shut down. A storm hits and suddenly tankers are delayed for weeks. Workers go on strike and production grinds to a halt. All of this creates these huge, totally unpredictable delays that ripple out and end up hitting energy prices and supplies thousands and thousands of miles away. So that leads to the million-dollar question for pretty much any business out there, right? How on earth do you practice for something like this before it actually happens? How do you get ready for a shockwave when you can't even see it coming? Well, this is where something like ResilienceXAI comes into play. And honestly, the best way to think about it is exactly like a flight simulator for a pilot. I mean, you wouldn't want a pilot's first engine failure to be on a real flight, right? Same idea here. Instead of waiting for a real-world disaster to find all your weak spots, you can run all these what-if scenarios in a totally safe digital sandbox to see what breaks. So what does this actually let you do? Well, it boils all that complexity down into 4 really powerful things. First, you can mock up a disruption scenario in literally minutes. Then, you can use AI to predict the real, tangible risk of delays. After that, you can compare different ways to fix the problem. And finally, you can build a solid playbook, so when a real crisis hits, your team isn't scrambling. They know exactly what to do. Okay, enough talk. Let's get our hands dirty. We're going to jump into the simulator right now and see how this actually works, using our Venezuelan oil crisis scenario on a set of imaginary shipments. It's a pretty straightforward 4-step process. First, we'll set our baseline, what normal looks like. Then, we'll unleash the disruption. After that, we'll measure the impact. And finally, we'll test out some ways to fix it. So first things first, the baseline. I mean, you can't really measure the impact of a crisis if you don't know how things are supposed to work on a good day, right? This baseline run is super important because it shows us where our hidden vulnerabilities are even before things go wrong. Okay, take a look at our baseline. Most of these shipments are looking pretty good, low to medium risk. But, see that first one? SH-4815, heading to the USA? That one's already flagged as high criticality with a risk score of 0.65. Now, that could be for any reason. Maybe it's a really tight deadline, or it's stuck with a single carrier. Whatever it is, that's our first red flag. All right, you ready? This is where we stress test the system. We're going to go in and flip the switch, toggle that Venezuela crisis scenario to on. This is going to simulate all the chaos, port delays, shipping container shortages, you name it. And wow, the impact is immediate. The platform's AI instantly recalculates all the risk scores. Remember that fragile shipment to the US? It just jumped from 0.65 to 0.91. That's basically a guaranteed delay. And even our safest shipment, the one that was at 0.18, it just skyrocketed to 0.61. Suddenly, everything is in the red zone. And if we zoom out and look at the big picture, it's crystal clear. Our average risk score nearly doubled, jumping from 0.42 all the way up to 0.77. For all the data nerds out there, that means our entire risk curve just shifted way over to the right. In plain English, our whole operation just became a massive, unpredictable mess. Okay, so spotting the risk is huge, but that's really just step 1. The real question is, what are we going to do about it? And this is what's called the decision rehearsal moment. It's the whole reason a tool like this exists. And this is what's so cool. We can now test our options side by side without spending a single dollar in the real world. So for example, we could try to reroute our shipments. That might work, but it's probably going to be expensive. Or maybe we increase our buffer stock. That's cheaper right now, but it doesn't actually fix the delay. The simulator just lays out all these trade-offs for you plain as day. The platform also spits out numbers that are really easy to understand, like this one, a 25% increase in lead time volatility. Now, that doesn't just mean things are late, it means they're unpredictable. A delivery that used to take, say, 10 to 12 days might now show up in 10 days or 15. Good luck trying to plan anything around that. And this really gets us to the whole point of this exercise. It's about making a fundamental shift, moving from a reactive mode where you're constantly putting out fires to a proactive one where you've already got the fire extinguisher in hand. You know, a huge part of being proactive is just good communication. I mean, all this amazing data is pretty useless if you can't get your leadership team to understand it and act on it. That's why the system can automatically generate a simple summary, one that clearly explains the business impact and lays out what to do next. It turns all this deep, complex analysis into a straightforward strategic decision. And that quote just nails it, doesn't it? This isn't just about weathering the next storm or surviving the next crisis. It's about using these events, even the ones that are just simulations, to learn, adapt, and build a supply chain that's smarter, stronger, and more resilient for whatever comes next. So I'll leave you with this to think about. Whether it's another energy crisis, a major port shutting down, or your most critical supplier suddenly going offline, if you could run a what-if simulation for your single biggest risk, what would you test? Because having a way to prepare for that uncertainty, well, that completely changes how you look at both risk and opportunity.